message, I thought that I would speak to you just so that I could vary up the media in which you received the message from Mr. B. And so I wanted to first thank you all for your participation in our C4I, our instructional rounds. A special shout out to Miss Khalil and to Mrs. Young for joining the instructional support team on that day. But we were able to visit about 7 or 8 classrooms, and all of those teachers that we were able to visit were able to have a coaching conversation with Terry Morgan or one of our instructional support team members. And the day was really about making sure that our coaches have the support to provide and obtain feedback as they visit your classrooms, and to really increase the coaching conversation, because we saw that those coaching conversations are very meaningful to your success as we think about the success of students and student achievement. We've also been in classrooms doing our informal observations, and we are noticing great practices in action. We're noticing target task alignment in most cases, but there is a trend that we are noticing, and it is that teachers may not be as prepared as possible when giving instruction to students. And so I want to talk a little bit today about preparation. Being prepared for instruction is crucial for effective teaching. And yes, we have professional learning communities. We have PLCs for STEM, for humanities. But when we also visit PLCs, we've noticed in some grade levels, a lot of the conversation is focused on what we're teaching. And as a professional, you should be the expert in knowing what to teach, meaning that you should be doing your due diligence before PLCs to know where you're at and what you're teaching for this week or even the weeks to come. And really, professional learning communities are an opportunity for you and your team to collaborate and plan how to teach. So PLC shouldn't really be focused on the what. Everybody should come with a clear understanding of the what. And if you don't, there should be opportunities to ask clarifying questions, to address misconceptions. As you've reviewed the lesson prior to PLCs, you might have some questions that you want to talk through with your team. But most of that conversation should be focused on how to teach rather than what to teach. And so as we think about PLCs moving forward, it really should focus on what are those instructional strategies that we can implement to make what we're teaching come alive. So during our PLCs, we have to dedicate time to discuss and share those effective instructional practices, those deliberate practices. We should be exploring different teaching methods, techniques, and resources that can enhance student engagement and learning. And that collaboration with colleagues is brainstorming those ideas and then making some common agreements, some shared agreements to adapt those strategies within those lessons. We oftentimes talk about what we're going to teach, how we're going to teach it, and it's going to look a little different in every room because you have your own art of teaching. But the science of teaching should be consistent in every classroom. And if we're focused on equitable student outcomes, we must provide equity in instruction by one, being prepared and knowing what we're going to teach, and then making sure that students have access to those same type of formative assessment strategies, the same type of instructional practices in each classroom. That's why it's important to come ready to share in PLCs. I know we have a lot of new staff, but I want you to embrace your expertise. All of us are experts in our own right, and we have to come to PLCs ready to share those best practices and success stories from our classroom. Don't be intimidated because you might be on a team with some veteran teachers. Teachers should always be lead learners. We should always be reflective practitioners on our practice. And so we can continue to grow, especially we have that growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. We can continue to learn from one another. So come to PLCs ready to share those best practices, discuss what has worked well. You can even discuss some challenges because that can also enhance the conversation for others to help you problem solve for the best results for your students. Again, we can learn from one another and gain valuable insight into effective teaching methods. And then also PLCs should be an opportunity for analyzing student data. That's why we have to have common formative assessments. When we think about exit tickets, when we think about how students are going to demonstrate their learning, we should be talking about how are students going to demonstrate mastery towards the standards that we're teaching. And so it's very important that in PLCs, we're taking time to analyze student data and identify areas of improvement and enrichment. But you can only do that if the team has a common assessment, a common task that you're going to bring back to PLCs to review. It shouldn't just be, well, this is what I noticed. Bring some samples to PLC so that you can analyze and your team can analyze the data. Yes, you have your 25, 30 students in your classroom, but the team shares the entire grade level. We all have a responsibility to make sure the 100 or 130 students are growing towards reaching that standard. And so to discuss those strategies and address individual student needs, you have to bring those student samples to analyze the data and meeting the needs of our students. And then it's also an opportunity to plan interventions and extensions. When we're looking at that data, we can think about what are those critical standards that we might need to spend a little bit more time on, provide more intense instruction. And this can be a basis of conversation for planning tier 2. You should be using time in PLCs to think about your struggling students and extensions for your students who are actually meeting that standard at that time. Collaborating, developing those targeted interventions and enrichment activities as a team is essential when we think about our grade level tier 2 approach that we're going to be entering this week. We're going to have a planning time this Thursday, but we should be thinking about this as we think about it as a system, not just an isolated period, but this should become a system within your PLC. So you should also be bringing resources and ideas to support students who need additional support for those standards that you are teaching, as well as making sure that students continue to not only maintain their mastery, but even enrich their skills with more challenging tasks. And so finally, remember PLC time is valuable to collaborate and learn from each other and to plan that effective tier 1 instruction. If we don't have tier 1 instruction that is quality and effective, of course, our tier 2 cycle will always be daunting. And so we get the bang for our buck when our tier 1 instruction is of quality. And it comes by being prepared and knowing what to teach and using our PLC time to really focus on how are we going to teach these skills. And so this is also an opportunity to enhance your skills in that PLC time when you're focusing on how are we going to teach. And I want to leave you with this quote that I picked up when I was in church, not this week, but last week. And I kind of altered it a little bit to fit just the quality of teaching. So it says the quality of your teaching is dictated by your consistency in varying circumstances. As long as we're consistent with our practices, even when things don't go as we think or as we plan, we will still have quality teaching. We can't necessarily dictate how our students are going to respond to our instruction, but our quality of teaching is dictated by our consistency with deliberate practices. And so the MEC way should be visible each and every day. With our learning boards being updated, we're having those formative assessment moments built in within each chunk of the lesson. And we're also making sure that students are utilizing success criteria to monitor their learning as well as the learning of their partners or their teams. And so please make sure you're embracing your expertise, that you're being consistent with your deliberate practice, that you're coming into the classroom, being prepared on what you are supposed to teach, and then coming to PLCs with being prepared on what to teach, and then willing to grow as you collaborate with your colleagues on how you're going to teach the standards. And so I appreciate all of your hard work. Mary Castle is one of the hardest working staff that I know. But we got to have this push right in here to make sure that we are being deliberate and consistent with our teaching. And so I look forward to joining classrooms this week, and I know it's going to be a fantastic week at Mary Castle.